All right. Uh, Happy to join you again. If you were here for our last session, you would have learned about some of the traps and the conflicts and values conflicts, emotional conflicts that are facing late blooming, especially middle aged and mid career decision makers, career switchers, business deciders, direction deciders who have become misfits because now misfit in our world is not a bad word at all. It is the place of discovery. It is the place of search. It's the place of possibility and optionality. It's just not a permanent place. You are not supposed to be in the place of misfit decision making for too long. Now, having said that, it can happen if you work at it, if you are taking steps and taking actions, then what it's going to be is not indecision, but it's going to be a spiraling journey of um, sequential decisions and actions being made. The real core of decision making is action. You're in a world so much larger than yourself, with so many more options than even a generation ago, options of direction, options of place, options of arena to operate in. And so you have to introduce some forms of constraint. One of those constraints is, a focus on a particular niche or decision maker. And the other type of constraint is action, because action sort of shaves off the abstract from the actionable. It begins to teach you far more than any number of books and any number of seminars and courses and mentors can teach you. And it sets the stage for a feedback loop. So an acumen flywheel can begin. Now, uh, in this particular section, as promised, so if I recommend that you go back to the late blooming video if you've not watched that, because we talk about the three types of thought leader that there are and how to identify yourself, especially the difference between the catalytic and the cathartic, which has very strong similarities to the difference between the artist and the designer and the approaches. Uh, in addition to that, we also talked about the paradoxical, counterintuitive insight that actually, for those of us who think or who have been told or who have been, uh, I guess, influenced to believe that we don't have that much time left because we're not 20 anymore. Uh, Toss that aside. Actually, if your ambitions are sufficiently large, the slow road, the long road is the shortcut. So check that out. And as promised, we're going to start out on step two. How do you take those epics that you used to break your impasse? How they we talked about that in the previous video. How if your desire machine was broken, the strategies that you could use, bringing in long distance mentors into your field of view, and systematically either following one mentor or combining elements of two or three of them to form the vision, the summit vision for yourself. Now, that was within that structure. I did not mention the specific, what kind of mentor, or I didn't mention in any way some ways of deciding who your mentor is going to be. In my case, I've chosen Alex Hormozi, particularly because he is super articulate about the how to go on an asymmetrical journey of entrepreneurship. And in my view, he has gone through the life cycle. The entrepreneurial life cycle for me goes from basically, the initial activation where you're literally activating your hidden assets, finding your voice, identifying your advantages. And he has gone all the way from there, all the way to stage 6 in my scheme and framework, to acquisitions and what I refer to as agglomeration, like literally putting related businesses together or nearby in your own defined ecosystem. So he's done that. And it's not just that he's done that. There are a lot of people who've done that journey over the decades. But he's here, and he's supremely articulate about the challenges that you face on that journey and the stages. Now, one thing that I think is missing from the whole discourse, it's not coincidental that Alex Hormozi is going to be launching his money models book next week, and I am talking about Mogulhacking Alex Hormozi this week. But in fact, he has been a long distance mentor almost as soon as I realized that I have been a poor protege myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gogo Erekosima. I am the founder of IdeaAge Consulting. I am a consultant, coach, and entrepreneur. What we are in the business of is helping thought leaders, knowledge workers, trainers, consultants, and coaches figure out from their thought leadership the breakthrough ideas that can break through the noise of the marketplace and give them a position of authority in the market and influence. Now, so with Hormozi, one of the things that I really think is very undersold is that he is an apprentice, or he has been an apprentice. If you investigate his story carefully, you'll figure out that he has been a very competent apprentice at least twice in his ascent journey. So I am going to combine the 4 steps that I ended the previous session with when I said that if you are broke, if you are brilliant but blocked, if you are brilliant but broke, then there is a 4-step journey that you can take, keeping in mind that you cannot practice failure aversion. You have to practice failure alchemy. You have to go from failure aversion to failure alchemy, and you have to get good at failure alchemy. I use the small fails framework, where we go from small fails to small plays. And part of our launch of the September Strategy Challenge, starting November 9th, starting September 9th, starting in a few weeks from now, exactly like 30 days from now or a month from now, the September Strategy Challenge is designed to help you overcome this aversion. Because if you can't go from aversion to alchemy when it comes to your relationship to failure, if you don't know how to frame it, how to manage failure, then the new developments, funnels won't help you, frameworks won't help you. The proliferation of AI models and apps and AI enabled, this entire era of advantages that are possibly yours will not help you. Because for you to go from where you are to where you can leverage your own advantages and then package them so that you can combine your advantages with the advantages of others for the purpose of your ascent, for the purpose of your affluence, for the purpose of your own breakthrough, if you can get over the failure that keeps you from shipping projects, if you can get over the failure that stops you from climbing onto a platform and gaining greater visibility, if you can't take big failures and make them small failures that have possibly very high upsides, then Alex Hormozi is not going to help you. AI is not going to help you. Funnels are not going to help you. More leads is not going to help you. And neither, by the way, is making blockbuster offers going to help you. It's kind of simple. But here's what we're going to talk about today. So there's a journey that starts with you being what we call a misfit. Now, I don't want to say it this way, but a misfit is not a bad word in my world. Okay, in this matrix where you and I are having this transformational conversation. A misfit means that you are between worlds, that you are between arenas, that you are between domains, that you are at a crossroads, that you are in the place of search, of scan, of decision, and you are not going to stay in that place without gaining the benefits, the wisdom that should accrue to you from being here. Whether you're a mid-career executive who has to make a decision about the business that you could do with the skills that you have. What I recommend to everyone who is a mid-career person or an executive who has a solid expertise is don't wait. We're going to give you a framework for turning your past expertise into search projects, into sprints, into into little bets. All right. But the journey that we're going to take, the 4 steps to go from where you are to where Alex Hormozi and people like him are, is to go from misfit to maker, to go from maker to master builder, to go from master builder to Maven mogul. Now, the Maven mogul is somebody who becomes a mogul because they first became a visible Maven thought leader. And, excuse me, these steps means that some of the things that you think are disadvantages to you right now are actually advantages. And that is the mindset, that is the wealth matrix system mindset that I want you to adopt. That when you think you don't have, you actually have. The Misfit to Mogul framework that I discuss here actually has its roots in an old story. The story goes in the Christian Bible that Jesus taught about 3 servants who were given gifts. And one of those servants was given 1 talent. And it wasn't gifts so much as investments, seed money in our modern parlance, right? And one of the employees, by our terms, was given 1 talent. The other was given 3, and another was given 5. Now, the boss expected that each would go and put those seed monies to profitable use. And the one who was given 5 came back eventually when the boss came back with 10. The middle guy came back with 6. But the guy who was given 1 talent came back with the 1 talent and tried to blame the boss. His whole story was, look, man, I know that you are a rugged man, you're a hard man, and you try to get over, and you try to work and outwork us and pull resources from us, and you take advantage of your privileges. You play a zero-sum game, and I could see what was going to happen. I would bring I would go do all this work, and when I brought it back to you, I wasn't going to get any extra benefit from it. Let's talk about what this means. Well, The boss looked at them and was not happy with the guy who buried his talent and who refused to invest. If you are afraid of shipping, if you're afraid of making your bets, making your offers, launching your business, sending out your promotions, reaching out to partners, you are doing the same thing. You're burying the seed money, you're burying the investment money, you're burying the assets, you're burying, I mean, not to be trite, but I have to say this, you're burying your asset generating assets. And you're doing it in such a way that you have become the primary obstacle to your prosperity, to your wealth, to your ascension. Years ago, Eli Goldratt published his book, The Goal. And The Goal was the beginning. I'm not sure if it was the first book, but it was the beginning of the real major public beginning of his articulation of his theory of constraints. And the theory of constraints is used today in lean manufacturing, in lean business. It basically transferred the principles of lean to the business world beyond manufacturing. Theory of constraints is often considered a lean business framework or a lean process framework. But he basically says, look, you have inputs coming into a pipe and you have outputs leaving the other end of the pipe. If your business is the same way, you need to figure out where the place where there's a bottleneck in that pipe of your business. And he calls those the core constraints. And you need to deal with it and open it up. When you open that up, you're going to discover that there's another core constraint in your pipe. It was probably not as serious or as big as the original core constraint, but now that you fix the original core constraint, you fix the next one and you fix the next one. And he used the core constraints and the theory of constraints to develop a continuous improvement process for business, a continuous improvement process for processes, frankly, and it has broad applications today for business growth. In this world, in that world of constraints, one of the observations, one of the descriptions that we have one of the phenomena that we've observed in today is that once upon a time, the constraints were in the market. And then the constraints were supply constraints, right? Like decades ago, you couldn't really get the same access to a manufacturer as the bigger companies. Today, there's 3PL, third-party logistics companies. Today, there's dropshipping. Today, there's the ways to partner with manufacturers and sell their goods, even though you're a small entity. So the constraints have been moving. They've moved away from the supply, which is the manufacturing side. So they've moved away from even the markets. Now your markets don't have to be local anymore. They've moved away even from partners. Today, you can partner with people across town, across the globe, across the country, from East Coast to West Coast. So the constraints to you building a platform or a business that can change your life have been shifting and shifting and shifting. And it is credible to say that today the constraint is you. And more than you generally, the constraint is your mindset, your imagination about what it is you can and cannot do with the various options that exist. And the constraint is your way of behaving around opportunity, your way of behaving with time, your way of behaving with money, your way of behaving with resources. And it's very important. It's very, very important that the blocks, mental blocks, be brought down by reps, by the number of times you practice doing that thing outside of your comfort zone. During our September Strategy Challenge, you will go through what I refer to as the small fails framework. The reason it's called the small fails and not the small wins or the small victories framework is because I want conscious acknowledgement if you have any negative relationship with that word failure. You want to get over failure and you want to get over it as fast and as regularly as possible. You want to understand that predicting or anticipating failure is literally going to be the biggest barrier to your ascent. The Misfit to Maven journey, the Misfit to Mogul journey, is designed that when you're a misfit, when you're somebody who's between decisions, when you're somebody who's between specialties, when you're somebody who's between successes, when you're somebody who's between your stacks, your fortunes, you want to set up your situation so that you can make many small experiments. I call that sprints. Now, sprints have a specific term or a specific meaning in the worlds of project management and IT, but in general, personal challenges that you undertake, personal project challenges that you undertake, whether they're for the process of, for building your platform or for enhancing your professional status or for profit, they're all sprints. And your sprints within the September framework can be temporal. You can play with time. You can make your sprint a 12-hour sprint. You can make your sprint a once every 12-hour sprint. You can make your sprint a 12-day, once every 12-day sprint. You can make your sprint a 12-week, a 12-month sprint. And in the September strategy system, the expedition, the long stretchable year along which I want to encourage you to play a game, is going to be the stretch, the September year. And the September year game is played across 12 quarters. That is roughly 3 years. So get used to this relationship of having time be very fluid and very playful. Be more playful, but play longer games. Be more playful, but play bigger games. Don't play fast games or don't insist on fast results. And the reason why is because the world has changed. We're no longer in the information age. We're in the idea age. That's why I named my company Idea Age Consulting, because it represents the arrival of the Google search engine in I believe it was the year 2000, represented a paradigm shift that, in my opinion, took us out of the information age and into the idea age. What that means is that instead of information being the big commodity, idea became the big commodity. Information became oversupplied. You could Google and you could do a Google search, and in 5 seconds you had access to thousands of pieces of information, hundreds of pages in the cases of some searches, and you could get lost in that information. So for the earlier era, information was power, but now, no, information is not power. The catalytic idea is power. Without the catalytic idea, you don't gain momentum with a proliferation of large language models or AI-enabled tools. Without a catalytic idea that is powerful enough to move you because it has moved an audience that finds you useful, or that finds you representing an idea that they feel needs to be articulated in the culture, without that idea, you're not going to go forward. So that idea is the key technology, and you can throw everything out, all the decisions that you're trying to make, until you find that idea. Don't move anything. Don't make any investment. That idea is the first idea. The first investment that you have to make is finding that big idea. And the way to find that big idea is to engage in small sprints. You have to take action. You have to pay the price for clarity. There's too many choices for you to think you're going to think your way or read your way to the big idea. It's just not going to work. Dan Kennedy, who was a direct response advertising maven, who was one of Alex Hormozi's indirect mentors, basically had this idea. He said this, that most people don't pay the price that they have to pay for clarity. There is a price to be paid for clarity because we have too many choices. That's the paradox of choice that Barry Schwartz talked about. You are overwhelmed with choices, so you have to start with yourself. The world is so much bigger than you. You don't have a hope of a prayer of finding the constraint that gives you a decision in that big world. It's got to be in here. And so the way that we do this is engaging in this sprint, in these discovery sprints, which means you got to get over your aversion to failure and look at failure as a source of alchemy, a source of stories that can literally generate you audiences. Even if you fail, if you pick up the right skills, your failures can turn into stories, and stories are assets. So you can go from failure to story, story to audience, audience to monetizable, licensable asset. That's the kind of economics that we're talking about in the idea age. And Hormozi is a perfect illustration of that and worthy for you to apprentice to. But you got to notice something first about people like Alex Hormozi. Most of the gurus you listen to will be selling you proven systems. But there is a big trap in selling proven system if you hope to go from Misfit to Maker, from Maker to Master Builder, from Master Builder to Maven and Mogul. That is a journey. That is like 3 or 4 wealth cycles. And you have to prepare yourself for that journey. Your character has to match. That's the difference between the billionaires, the pre-billionaires, who I believe Alex Hormozi is probably one of the pre-billionaires. We're wasting our billionaires. They're either funding toxic capitalism and toxic consumerism, or they're just there and we're just admiring them blindly. No. Look, mogul hacking these guys is about breaking down their journey to the actionable steps. One of the steps that I read the comments over the years, over the last few years, as Hormozi has increased his profile from the gym launch days to broader thought leadership. You find out that nobody is talking about the fact that his journey has had at least 2 apprenticeships. He committed himself to an apprentice journey when, I forget the name of the guy who was out there in the gym world in California, but he literally apprenticed with him. And I'm telling you something, that at this stage, before you think about becoming a mogul, you must first be a competent misfit. And what it means to be a competent misfit, remember, misfit is not a bad word in my world here. Misfit, it means that you become competent at running your sprints. You become competent at doing small fail challenges, and you follow the small fail framework. So that means that you think about, what are the levers that get me from point A to point B? You break them down, and then you turn them into an adventure. Play, yes, I told you in the last session that you have to play longer games, but make the games more fun. And you can do that by these 3 protocols that we're going to initiate in the September Strategy Challenge next month. The way you do it is this. For you to go from failure aversion to failure alchemy, to becoming skilled at assetize, like turning your failures into assets, turning your failures into products, turning your failures into channels for audience building or for influence building, you first got to go ahead and make a failure that's worth failing at. So you sit down and you say, okay, what is the thing that if I succeed at doing it over the next 12 days or 12 weeks or 30 days is going to blow up my profile? But if I fail, if I fall on my face doing it, it's not so big that it destroys my business. It doesn't seize my money. It doesn't take me out like emotionally, but instead, actually, it makes me a more interesting person, and I can turn it into narrative. Look, if you haven't found your big idea, well, yeah, you can visit us at Idea Age Consulting, but forget about that. If the idea thing is not the thing working for you, well, turn your narrative into interestingness, turn your narrative into uniqueness. Before you talk about branding, you got to talk about differentiation. If you look like everybody else, or your thoughts and the ideas you're putting out there are like everybody else, well, good grief, you're not going to stand out. So you can monetize failure by standing out indirectly. And that's why it's a longer game, because it's an indirect game. If you're sufficiently ambitious, then you're seeking a shortcut is actually what Alex Hormozi refers to when he talks about Building a foundation for a $10,000 or $100,000 a year business is very different from building a foundation that can become a $10 million business. We are in an era where we have so many asymmetrically operating tools. There are tools, it's not linear. You have to reset your time orientation so that you're not thinking in a linear way, because that's what tempts you to go after get rich quick, or that's what tempts you to become opportunistic in selecting which path you're going to choose. Apprenticeship is not the slow road, because actually you're choosing between a proving ground and a proven process. Most of the people that are going to be your contemporaries and your competition, especially in the influence game, in the Maven game, are going to be looking first for proven processes. You're not as behind the game as you think, because the most of the people that you are going to be competing with, even if you start now, even if you start next month, are already conditioned by copywriters. And yes, some of the top copywriters used to be at least one of them used to be my clients. So I'm telling you, we have all been conditioned over the last 15, 20 years to look for proven systems. And you'll see it in any sales letter, any video sales letter you watch. But that is a misdirection. It's a trick. What you have to do is find a proving ground that is safe. So for us, going from Misfit to be a great Misfit, you have to go through what I call the Misfit tunnel. That is, you have to ready your mind and your immediate infrastructure for a period. It might be 3 months, but you have to be prepared for it to be like 30 months or 12 quarters. And that tunnel is for you to find one thing, one idea that you become masterful at, but you make it safe. How do you make it safe? You prepare yourself to storyfy your journey and to monetize the journey. So it's like this. You're saying, okay, so I'm not going to be this great expert that is making 10,000. This is how you mistakenly become the expert in 3 months rather than 3 years, by the way. You set the foundation for a 3-year journey, and you counterintuitively, you make it more likely, because you were preparing for a 3-year journey, both mentally and in terms of your station game. A station game is basically how you stacked and prepped, how you created a side gig or kept the side job, whatever it is you did. But you make it more likely that your 3-year preparation is going to yield a 3-month journey to your next milestone. It can't be the other way around, though. You have to prepare for a long game, and you have to become a long game player. That's Alex. That's everybody who goes from Misfit to becoming a mogul. They had to go through multiple spirals. They had to go through 3 or 4 wealth cycles. That's a mental thing more than anything else. And if you feel that you're so impatient that you can't be an apprentice for 6 months, that's 6 months that you thought you were saving when you went to look for a proven process. You lost the mentality. You lost the neural conditioning. You lost the nervous system that you were going to need to go through 3 or 4 wealth spirals. And that's the difference. Like, you're not going to be a guru until you accept that, okay, I got an apprentice. And that's a longer time frame. And that takes you out of the opportunistic mindset, but it saves you from get rich quick. It saves you from misdirections like that. So we go from the Misfit tunnel. I called it this tunnel because it goes underground. You're doing work and you don't get the payoffs publicly. So you get into a situation where your current infrastructure starts to bother you. It might be your personal people who will travel 100 miles to help you survive are often not going to travel 10 minutes to help you succeed. And you just have to accept that. It's not that they're jealous. It's not that they don't want you to be more successful than them. It's because they are programmed to help you survive, but they themselves have not thought about the difference between survival and success. And so they're not likely to lift a finger to help you in the success journey. And these are 2 different journeys. If you are trying to survive, the job keeps you surviving. It keeps you paying the mortgage. It keeps the car running. It puts gas in the car and food on the table. But that's the survival game. When you step out of yourself and you say, okay, I want to commit to the success trajectory and the success journey and play the success game, you need to prepare yourself mentally and create your proving ground filled with people. It doesn't have to be many, 3 to 5, 7, 10, 20 people who are prepared to help you and be helped along the success journey. It's a different language from survival. Your spouse, your family, your siblings, the vast majority of friends, most of those people only know the language of survival. Many of them might luck into a success trajectory. When I say luck, they worked hard and they did all they did. But over time, they began to see, whoa, I don't have to just survive. I can actually start working towards success. So they're not used to going out of their way or even lifting like a 10-minute ride to go help you succeed. You have to build that infrastructure on your own. And the success infrastructure is very different from the survival infrastructure. If you take the expectations of somebody on a success journey like yourself and you put it on your spouse, or you put it on your kids, or you put it on your friends who are only ready to help you survive, you're going to break the relationship. So what I recommend that you do is, one, rule of 100 that Alex Hormozi talks about is along these lines. But don't just go rule of 100 by yourself. Why not make it fun for you? Why not learn how to go from, okay, I want to do this. I'm going to attract. I'm going to put out one idea using my identity and my story as the trigger, as the honeypot, to attract a small group of people around me. And let's design challenges and go on this journey together. What you've done now is you've become a leader. And you're baby stepping your way into overcoming failure aversion, and you're baby stepping your way in at the same time into failure alchemy. Because what you're really doing is you're building a squad. What do we have in common? You have in common that you're going in a direction, and you have in common that, oh, wait a minute, we can go this thing step by step. We can build a skill. We can use this skill as a sustaining device, right, to keep us on our journey. But our main goal is in 3 months, in 6 months, we're going to get to X destination. And you can do that on Facebook. You can do that on YouTube. You can do that on LinkedIn. When you've built a squad like that, now you start working on the skill, or you start working on the space, the specialization that is your journey, that is your track to mogul status. For Alex Hormozi, it was gyms, and it was learning how to sell gym memberships. It was learning how to advertise gym memberships. Then it was learning how to run them, how to manage them, how to scale them. So you start from narrow. It's like you're invading alien territory, and it's skill acquisition, but it's really an invasion. And you're starting from a small micro skill, just enough to be valuable to somebody, and you work on that. And then you build from there. And then you scale up to process, and then you're scaling up to when you're now representing a big idea to your niche. Now, one of the ways that you can do this is to say to yourself, okay, who is like me? Who has a story like mine? This is the most obvious way. I call it a shared story or story of ours. It works best if they fit your demographic, they fit your profile, and when they look at you, they can relate to you. Many people look at you and you're just, you're the wrong, you're just not a fit. They don't resonate with you because most people are selfish and self-involved. They don't see themselves in others unless that person looks like their twin or is around their age. So most people are not imaginative enough to get out of their demographic and see themselves in you if you're different in age from them or you're different in background for them until you're established. So that's fine. Start with the beachhead of people whose story is very similar to yours in some ways that count. For me, what I'm really going after is the middle-aged guys. Yes, I have a lot of young people that are my mentor, and that are mentees, that are proteges, that are people who I once coached who are running their own businesses. But when I'm talking about starting a public platform, what I'm telling my clients is watch me do what I'm telling you to do. And who did I choose? I'm choosing people who are middle-aged or mid-career. They might be executives. There might be executives who are thinking about career switching. They're thinking about plan B, an entrepreneurial journey. But what they're going to have in common with me is that When I say to them, hey, you might be thinking, oh man, I need to raise about $200,000 so that my kids can go to the best schools within the next few years. At the same time, my parents are in, I have to make sure my parents are taken care of and the older ones are getting older. We're kind of in the middle. And do I really have enough time to play a long game and build my fortune? So they share the same concerns as me. You can search your own profile. I talk about the shell audits. Go through your story. Have people interview people who know you, like 5 or 6 people who know you very, very well. Maybe a business partner, a close friend, family members, and then a mentor, and then put the profile together. Just do a series of recorded interviews and then put the profile together and think back to what are your hidden, I say hidden because you might have been fighting against these assets and advantages thinking that they were your weaknesses, they were your failures. Some of them are your embarrassments, but actually when reframed, they're not really your embarrassments. They're epic stories that are going to launch you into a different level. And you just never explored them because you were averse to revisiting them. You didn't want to go back to that story. It made you feel odd. It made you feel like a misfit, like an oddball. But many of the advantages are there. And that's why a lot of the people that are called constipated thought leaders get stuck. They get stuck because their advantage was behind a place that they thought was their disadvantage. So for us, what we want to do first is learn how to be an apprentice, learn how to be a self-driven learner. You're not going to go along the Alex Hormozi path if you don't learn how to be an apprentice, which is easier than being a self-driven and autodidact. But that's your first journey. That's your first set of sprints. When we launch September Strategy Challenge at septemberstrategy.com next month, basically, I'm telling you what we're going to do is basically choose your own sprint from your own context. And your context is a proving ground. Yes, people are going to be encouraging you on the progress of your sprint or of your small failed challenge, but it's yours. And it's going to be engaging because it's yours. You just need a safe space. Just like insects, when they're changing from their form to a moth or a butterfly, they create a cocoon or a chrysalis. You need a protected space if you're going to go on an entrepreneurial ascent journey that is unusual. Most people are in the survival track. You are trying to be on the success track. They are not going to understand what you're talking about. So for you, learn from Hormozi how to be a great apprentice. What does it entail to be a great apprentice? One, it means you got to find a high quality authority mentor, somebody sometimes it can be a composite. It can be 3 people. And you combine them together and say, I'm going to see how stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. I'm giving you 12 quarters. This is a stretch year. A stretch year is not 12 months, it's 12 quarters. In that stretch year, you can create a miracle. Remember what is often said. Actually, Alex Hormozi himself has also alluded to this fact. Most people underestimate how much and how radically their lives can change in 3 years, but they consistently underestimate how much they can do in 3 months. If you were to develop a more fluid relationship with your goals and say, I am setting this 3-year journey and I am going to grind consistently in this 3-year journey, that 3-year journey will mess around and take you 6 months. But if you start out aiming for 6 months, much of life is like this. We have the pursuit of happiness. Much of life, much of the most precious things in life are actually paradoxical. You want to be happy, you can't chase happiness directly. You have to chase meaningfulness, wisdom, work. And then happiness comes in the opposite direction as a side effect of having a certain joyful contentment, gratitude. So you can't chase this thing directly. If you want to go directly, you're going to turn opportunistic, and there are so many choices and there are so many people well trained to convince you to become a fast mover. Well, a fast mover is not going to be able to survive multiple spirals. And that is the gift and secret of billionaires and pre-billionaires like Alex Hormozi, like a lot of the agency builders, Andrew Wilkinson, for instance. There are many of the people that I've seen their evolutions. And I remembered when Naval Ravikant talked about being wealthy without being lucky, he identified four gates. Those gates of code, media, capital, and arbitrage. I'm telling you that the missing aspect of the four gates are available to anybody who's watching this. But the competence is your character and what your nervous system is used to doing. If you don't become what I call a cloud or spiral rider, I use cloud because Theory of Constraints founder used to talk about conflict clouds. But basically, everybody from Mark Zuckerberg to the guy who founded the Chobani yogurt empire, each of these guys talks about how difficult it is to go from one stage to the next. What got you here won't get you there. That's what Hormozi has been good at. That's the hidden skill. It's a skill of adapting up a spiral while building. It's not just a flywheel of capital or financial capital or a flywheel of customers and leads and influence. There is an acumen and a character flywheel that has to accompany those. Those are the hard. Those are the hard skills. But the soft skills of an asymmetrical ascent is you being able to adjust to the opposite requirements from the requirements that your job had before. When you go from 3x, when your business goes 3x or 10x, the previous version of you has to break. And I'm telling you, it's better for you not to try to break that previous version of you in a vacuum, but rather to play the squad game. You don't have to go pay for expensive masterminds when you're just starting out as a misfit. Learn the competency first of circle building, of cohort building, right? And the way to do that, there's a 5-step framework that you can use to do that. One, identity. And you take your identity, you map out your identity along the lines of stories and archetypes, and then you turn it into a blinding insight, some kind of hook, some kind of big idea that is enough to attract people who are going to be enough like you or interested enough in the things that you're interested in that they will become part of, that they will agree to opt in and become part of a circle with you. From insight, you want to go into an invitation. So you're building, basically it's list building, right? But you're list building not for just a regular audience, you're list building a search squad. You're list building a group that is y'all are going to go to war together. It's an informal mastermind if you want to think about it that way. And in that third step, you're inviting them. And then from inviting them, you begin these interactions. What is this interactions about? Well, you're trying to break down. I alluded to it earlier in the previous session. You're trying to find gaps. There are 3 types of gaps that you can find when you form this circle. The first is solution gaps. The second is aspiration gaps, like gaps between where they are and where they aspire to be. And then the third is transformation gap. Transformation gap sounds like an aspiration gap, but it's not. Partly is internal. You're calling them to an internal challenge, to a change challenge. They want to change something fundamentally internal about themselves. So it's not just, oh, I'm here as a misfit and I'm going to become a mogul. No, they want to be, I react poorly to setbacks. I react poorly to changes. And I want to build internally and around me the capacity to adjust better to small fails. I want to build internally the capacity to adjust better to setbacks. Why? Because again, the skill of billionaires and pre-billionaires, the hidden skill those guys have, is that they can run one version of their business from 0 to 12 people, and then from 12 people to 27 people. When it starts to become a different business, they can become different. So it's more than just a growth mindset. It's a cloud rider capacity, is the capacity to adjust on the fly and to actually do some of the opposite things. For instance, let's give you an Alex Hormozi example. Alex Hormozi talks about gaining the skill, if you're going to go from entrepreneur to become CEO, gaining the skill of ignoring some problems. He's not the first CEO I've heard say that, but it is such a difficult, it's a that your nervous system has to learn that. One of the things about learning from people in close proximity is that your nervous system can copy people who are near you. But the idea that you're going to leave something that you know is a problem, that your customers are having problems about, is probably generating bad reviews on Yelp or Google Business. And and here your mentor is telling you, leave that and just focus on the core constraint problem. Let that problem sit until it threatens to become, until it becomes a bigger problem, then deal with it. That is a cloud writer competence. And I believe that the way that you gain that competence in real life is using the kinds of frameworks that the September strategy has put together, not just content, but context. It's not just, you're not going to develop this character from content. It's you can't coaching somebody from long distance how to ride a bicycle, just not going to work. They've got to try riding it. They've got to have somebody on the side. Then they've got to have guardrails. They got to fall a couple of times. That's the same with you and the small plays and the small fails. You got to try a couple of times and you got to gain the competency, not just the content. So for Misfit, the biggest thing that a Misfit is missing is clarity. Where do I go and how do I figure it out? I recommend something called simulated or fake clarity. That is, think about a place or somebody's problems that you want to solve, or something that you're already good at that maybe you're already getting paid for, and you can make a seamless transition. Maybe not smooth all the time, but you can make a transition from getting paid by your company or your boss, your employer, to slowly developing relationships with others and getting paid by the marketplace, a little bit at a time. This is step 2 of our 6-hour series. But basically, what you have to keep in mind is you're not going to go from Misfit to Mogul, right? That's just, it's a couple of spirals up a spiral journey. You need to build a squad, so you need to play squad games of building that squad. And I talked about, going from identity to impact. So you start with the identity and you pull out of that identity an insight or hook that can attract a small circle. You can operationalize that hook by turning it into a landing page, an invitation page for a small group. It can be a small paid group, or it can be an unpaid group, but that group becomes your mastermind. That group becomes your cohort for engaging in this search. And then you invite them into a structured process where you gamify, you invite them into a structured process where you gamify the act of this search for clarity. You literally are going to be trying things 12 days at a time, a week at a time, a month at a time. And you are doing this in the context of people that your own community, your sanctuary. And you're interacting with them, you're getting feedback from them. It's really worked great if you can invite into that small circle people that you hope to sell to, people that you hope to coach, people that you hope to turn into your customers at some point. Not these guys that you're invited, but people that are just like them. Then it's very useful because you can turn those interactions into innovation, into implementation. And that's where you now get impact. So your front door product, your mini product, your test event product, even if it's a physical product, you now have this subgroup, and you can pitch them on being founders. You can pitch them on being early viewers of what's going to become a big deal, and turn that into something that is amazing for them. And they will reward you with insights. They will reward you. Now, you're not doing this just alone. You're also going to do other tricks to figure out what the gaps are out there, the problem solution gaps that you might be able to solve, the present aspiration gap that you might be able to solve, the the mindset and transformation gaps that you might be able to solve. And because you're listening directly to the people who have those problems, you have a great place to start your sprint. You have a great place to start your experiment. Even if it fails, you have something that you can monetize. And that's why I'm telling you, always pay attention to hooks. Always pay attention to the hooks, the framing, the title, the naming of these adventures, of these projects, because If they succeed, you've turned you've if they succeed, then you've turned the flywheel for the first time. It's going to take a few more turns before the flywheel starts to turn on its own and reward you. But if it fails, because that's what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about the small fails while you're being an apprentice. If it fails, you're ready to turn it into a story. If it fails, you're ready to turn it into a case study. If it fails, you have to turn the acumen flywheel. You have to be like Alex in terms of being an apprentice who learns from little failures. And that's how you build an acumen flywheel. Long before you're going to build a capital flywheel, long before you're going to build a customer acquisition or influence flywheel, you got to build a way to take your learning and turn your learning into systems for the next sprint or systems for the next challenge. So the Misfit to Maven pathway goes, in general, the Misfit is engaged in a search. The Misfit is engaged in the idea. The click is looking for the click moment. The Misfit is looking for the aha moment, the unlock moment, the strategic glance. The maker is doing something different. When you're in your maker mode, that's when you turn rule of 100 into sprints, and you have your squad around you, and you turn these into sprint games. But you figure out where this short sprint, it might be a 12-day sprint or a 12-week sprint, doesn't matter. But you have to figure out where this sprint is going to locate itself in your 12-quarter journey. So you have to figure out where it has to be important enough, it has to be useful enough that over the course of the next 12 quarters, it becomes something that becomes an unassailable asset if you keep doing it, or if you keep doing something like it. So you're playing actually 3 games simultaneously. You're playing what I call a squad game, as you're learning how to build a cohort around you to enable your search and to enable your success. 2, you're learning how to be better at personal challenges and even gamified group challenges within the context of your own individual success. So this isn't about some coaching program with a standard framework. 3, you're learning how to play what we call this Cloud Rider or the Spiral game. And this is the game that every hyper successful, every stratospheric success is playing. It's a game of multiple turns and resets and redoubling of efforts and reinvestment of resources, whether that resource is reputation, whether that resource is acumen and knowledge, whether there are resources influence, or even your own financial capital. You're playing a spiral game now, and that is the game that the billionaires play. And you're playing it when you're still broke, but you're playing it because you've made it affordable. And that's the key. You have to build those structures so that you are building a proving ground and you have access to pioneer profits or to pioneer positioning. That's how you're going to build influence if influencer is your game. And if business is your game, that's how you're going to get access to pioneer profits more than commodity, because you have no competition, because you created the proving ground and you are the one who proved the concept with yourself and your cohort as the evidence. So that's the Misfit's job. The maker's job is just to gain mastery. So the rule of 100, practicing and being the absolute best you can at that one skill, because you're practicing that skill in streaks. Top copywriters talk about the Seinfeld method, where you just open the calendar and you mark off every day that same challenge, every day that you've done it with the green check mark. Pretty soon you get addicted to seeing yourself moving up that green check mark, and you hate to see an X. Today for me is the beginning of a 144-day sprint in which at least at some point during that day, I am going to live stream. At some point during that day, I am going to share with you some insight. That's my personal sprint ahead of the calendar, ahead of any of the launches or anything that we're going to do. You have to find your personal sprints, but you have to do them along a spiral journey. If you're doing 12 different sprints, 12 different careers, entrepreneurship is a career. That was a great quote by Rob Fitzgerald, author of The Mom Test. Entrepreneurship is a career, but for you to make it a career that pays, you have to put it into a spiral. You have to put it into a calendar where the things you learned in the first quarter are going to be benefiting you materially, operationally in the 12th quarter. And so when you are a maker, that's how you gain mastery. Now, going up to the master builder step, the master builder is your first step in actually creating an infrastructure of other people to do some of the work. So that's you breaking up the big functions that are making you money, or the big functions that are giving you a platform, and turning them into micro functions, and then systematically documenting them and handing them off, and learning how to accept that somebody who is going to be very useful to you is only going to do 80% of the job that you could have done if you were doing it the same. That's another curve. That's another change of your character, where your nervous system has to accept something that is probably not comfortable for you now. And if you don't turn that corner, you are not going to blow up. You are not going to scale up. You have to be able to accept, not in words, not in a conference, but in the day to day, that the person who is doing the job 80% of you is just like the other CEO decisions, that you let a problem be a problem until it becomes big enough for you to take care of. These are honestly, these are not brain skills. These are nervous system skills, and they are best learned in proximity, to the extent that you can make yourself close to your mentor who's long distance. So let's take Alex Hormozi as a prototypical authority mentor. If you say, how do I learn this skill of letting a problem get bigger until it's big enough to be attended to by me? I would go and check out every place where Alex Hormozi has actually identified that this is a specific skill, and every other CEO. I came across another CEO, Hotline. He's a 9-figure CEO, and he said the exact same thing, and some others. It's like, look, the biggest difference between the people who are able to scale to a big company and others who are not is that the others are able to build a capacity to let problems that are real problems. They're not imaginary problems. They're actually real problems, but they sit with them. They turn them into a temporary dilemma. Dilemmas are problems that are not solved. Dilemmas are problems where you have to manage yourself, not the problem. So what it's actually saying is that the one CEO skill that is going to accompany you up the spiral from Misfit to Maven to Mogul is that you've got to learn a form of state management where you can live with some of the dilemmas, like a problem that you know is a problem, that customers know is a problem. They're even starting to complain about it on Yelp, on Google Business, and your employees know it's a problem, and some of them really want to fix it, and you let it sit. You let it sit at its state of problemness until you have dealt with the core constraint. And that is a skill that you're not really going to learn about in business school, because nobody's really articulating it as this domain that you have to practice. But it is very, really and truly something that is going to keep you from, if you're at 6 figures, it's going to keep you from 7 figures. If you're at 7 figures, it's going to keep you from upper 7 figures. And delegating is the same way. It's the same dilemma. I'm going to give this task that is important to somebody who, when I see their results, they're operating at 80% or 70% of my level. You have to learn how to think like a spiral operator, meaning that you see the flywheel, that if you give that person a chance, the proper training and the enabling context, that 3 months or 6 months from that point, that person is going to go with your training. They're going to go from 80% of you to probably 105% of you. So you have to be willing to sit with the problem. That's dilemma management. That's not problem solving. That's dilemma solving. And that is you. That is a transformation that you will have to be making. So a master builder is setting in place these processes, SOPs, procedures, but you don't make the jump to the Maven until you have dealt with some of these dilemmas of leadership, where you have to focus on the core constraints in your business and you let problems be problems. Yeah, I'm not saying you don't manage them around the edges. You try to mitigate. So you do some propaganda, you do some communication, you try to let people be a little bit okay. You try to meet them halfway, but you're not solving that problem. You're letting that problem get bigger. It's one of the most counterintuitive things that I've heard Alex Hormozi say out of hundreds of videos and thought leadership, but it's counterintuitive wisdom. It's not counterintuitive knowledge. It's wisdom. Like literally, you've got to just say, I have to live with that problem, because the bigger problem that's going to blow us up, that's going to open up our pipes. Think about it from the theory of constraint standpoint, that you got to solve the problem that opens up the pipeline so that you get more throughput. This is that thinking operationalized. This is that thinking turned into a psychological skill. And you, as the leader, you, as the founder, that's what takes you from master builder to now starting to mess with Maven. So, who's the Maven in this picture? The Maven is the evangelist, is the deal maker. Once upon a time, I wrote something down, and it was a piece of thought that I put down on paper, and I left it lying about, and one of my family members saw it and started laughing at me. But it said, the dreamer and the doer are at war within me. There's a part of you that is dreamer, and there is part of you that is doer. You might be doer heavy, or you might be dreamer heavy. If you're dreamer heavy, you have to operationalize it by becoming a designer. You have to operationalize it by becoming a deal maker. But if you are doer heavy, then, and you do without a high value design or high value opportunity place, rethink your context. Take your doing gift and your doing skill and move it up the ladder. Start scanning. Pick up some of the habits of the misfits who are searchers, and start looking around for an opportunity to follow all your maker instinct, your instinct to just do the same thing over and over a day, over and over again, but apply it to a more profitable domain. And when you can do that, you've made the transition. You don't have to abandon something that you're passionate about, but on the side, use that same trait and apply it to something that's much more lucrative, and you'll be blown by how much that builds your life, how much that accelerates your success. Now, the Maven represents, first, a breakthrough framework, or a brand. A Maven is able to take themselves or their business and represent an idea, an emotion, a part of the culture that the culture feels is not readily and easily or available, or is not as available as it should be. So the Maven, by being the Maven in this setup, you become the evangelist from the business, which means you have to take a step back. And those dilemmas that we talked about 10 minutes ago are the dilemmas that you have to manage. You have to actually see them, understand that there are problems, and still accept the responsibility of continuing to sell what you know is not a perfect business. There is no perfect business. There's no problem-free business. There's no business that doesn't have its nasty parts, its kitchen, so to speak. You don't want to go see where all the sausage and all that is made. But the Maven, as the Maven, you have to go and represent that brand and sell it while living with some problems and fixing others. And you have to go and do a credible job of doing that while delivering at least the core value that you promised to the marketplace, or that you promised, if you're a coach, that you promised to your clients. So for instance, let's use the coaching business as an example. How do you scale up a coaching business? You must turn the core of your experience into a framework. You must turn the core of your experience into an 80-20 journey, where 80% of the people that you are addressing who have that problem or that transformation need or that aspiration that you're addressing, that 80% of them can share in common. So that journey becomes the mechanism by which, one, you attract a group, a crowd, a bunch of people, and two, by which you scale up and allow other coaches to get good at your journey framework, so that you can step away and represent both the framework and the business that serves it. That's who the Maven is in this setup. So you've gone from misfit to maker, from maker to master builder, and now from master builder to Maven. And Maven is where you have a chance to be like Daniel Priestley. Maven is where you have a chance to build a really profitable and growing agency or client service type business. If you want to follow Naval Ravikant's framework of how to get rich without being lucky, and the 4 gates of code, media, arbitrage, and capital, well, most of the people who are starting out, you're just not going to have the capital that you need to make a big move. So that leaves you with the other three. It leaves you with media, it leaves you with code, and it leaves you with arbitrage. There are so many arbitrage opportunities everywhere you look, especially if you're internet native and connected and hyper connected to the internet. Then there's arbitrage opportunities everywhere. It might be labor arbitrage, it might be arbitraging access to apps. There's a $80 million marketplace, app marketplace. There's lots of places where you can arbitrage asymmetry of information between groups. Some people in the financial world have made billions of dollars. Yes, it's not the best use of our capitalism, but there are people who have made billions of dollars by presenting one opportunity, from taking it from one stock market to another stock market first. That's an arbitrage opportunity. They took the same positioning, they took the same product to a different place. And by doing that, they enjoyed pioneer profits. So when you are a Maven, the way that you do it is, one, you find the catalytic idea. You can go back and listen to the difference between catalytic thought leadership and cathartic thought leadership, and make sure that you're not mistakenly jumping into one versus the other. And then separate from that, you can move on to the higher level, where now you are able to oversee the systems that you've set up to communicate your framework. Those are often called funnels or pipeline, depending on whether it's a marketing context or a sales context. You also have setting up the system to train the people who deliver your frameworks, deliver services or experiences according to the frameworks that you've articulated, how to train those people, how to recruit those people, how to make those people better at delivering those. And then finally, you use the set piece of how to partner with the people who help the business run, whether it's financially with bookkeepers or accountants, or it's legally with the people who help you with the legals or the licensings and all of that stuff. So it's a progression. Alex Hormozi started out, at least according to his public-facing story, consulting, and then he jumped like a misfit into the gym business. Apprenticed over there in the gym business, and then launched out to set up his own. So that's him being an apprentice was his misfit period. For him, going from misfit to maker was him leaving the apprenticeship to go launch his own gym. Now you become a maker. Now you've gained you're in a specialty practice, and you have to become an expert in it. Being able to go from one location to setting up systems so that he could clone locations is where he went from being a maker to being a master builder. But the jump from master builder for him to Maven was rough. When he lost, just because you know how to run a gym, or just because you know how to run a nail salon, or just because you know how to run a coaching business, does not mean you know how to be an executive. Does not mean you know how to vet a partner. Does not mean that you know how to be a co-founder. Does not mean that you know how to resolve some of the dilemmas that show up when the person that you thought was your partner turns out to be, less than partnery, if you will. So he had to make that jump from master builder to Maven. Took him being an apprentice. When he went to the mastermind, caught up with Russell Brunson, got to learn about all this digital marketing, digital advertising, paid advertising, how to scale media, all of that. That was his second mentorship. His first mentorship was operational. His second mentorship was marketing and sales. And in this mentorship, he got also a strategic mentorship, because somewhere along this line, his mentor told him, hey, you've got the wrong opportunity vehicle for what you're doing. And when he went from Misfit to Maven was when he went to licensing gym launch. And Maven, when you're a Maven of a scalable infrastructure like licensed IP, you can go to mogul status by just doing bigger and more of the same thing. And because we're in the connected age, we're in the age where even our devices are connected. We are connected. Our networks are connected. Our people, we are connected in ways, we couldn't imagine 30 years ago. So now, guess what? You are riding the flywheel. And Good to Great, Jim Collins talked about the flywheel. The flywheel where it begins to be a self-reinforcing virtuous loop. Jeff Bezos was so impressed with that concept that he redesigned Amazon around a data flywheel and an operational flywheel and eventually a capital flywheel. And guess what? You can initiate the beginning of a flywheel once you get into once you settle on top of a flywheel platform or flywheel mechanism. All you got to do is build the competencies to adapt to the increasing responsibilities, and sometimes potentially to the increasing regrets, and positively the increasing results that come your way. And so you're getting ready for an evolutionary journey from who you were to who you dream of being. In the next, we're gonna take a 30-minute break this time, and when we come back, we're gonna get started at 1:45 and Eastern time, so about 30 minutes from now. And when we come back, we're going to get operational about September strategy, which is my framework for helping everybody who's a switcher, everybody who's brilliant but blocked or brilliant but broke, and help you operationalize your brilliance, help you turn that brilliance out in a real way. Not, you have to be a prover. Like I said before, you have to set your proving ground and not look for proven processes. Those proven systems, the profits are already taken out of them and extracted out of them, and then the guru sells it out to the mass market. A guy named Rich Sheffrin, if you're not familiar with him, is one of the big business coaches. He's still around. He shows you a graph, and he shows you where most of his former coaches and his former clients, including Russell Brunson and a lot of big names that he shows you how generally it goes from, while we're still making money at it, it's a secret. Then we sell it to our first cohort, our first mastermind. We make our first $1 million or our first few $100,000 on it, and then we publicize it. We get affiliates, and then we share it with the public. So now you come in as a misfit, as a newbie, whether it's in coaching, consulting, digital business, online business, influence business, and suddenly you are actually swimming directly into red oceans. You're swimming into competitive markets being created by the mentor who you just paid $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 or $10,000 to learn from. So you're learning a proven system that is commoditized at the moment when you're buying into it. That is a loser's game. So what we're going to walk you through is how to play a winner's game with the September strategy game year. All right. So I hope that you will be back for the next session. No, Elite Street, I did not read all those books. I read like 90% of them. There are some of the books that are on my wish list to read. So I did not read all of them, but most of them have been read and turned into an operational like SOP for my growth. And also I use them to create curriculums for like my kids and for my masterminds. So, but no, there's some of them that I have not read, probably like 5% really. But anyway, so we're going to go into this motion, and then we'll talk about the September strategy, the systems of challenges, the systems of building your own cocoon, and the systems of graduating yourself from one layer and one level to the other while building the secret competence of the billionaires and the moguls. All right, so I'm gonna end it here, and we'll see you at about 1:45 on the next stream. Subscribe to this channel, and join us. But we're gonna be continuing this series until September 9th. All right, so I look forward to seeing you again here.